What happens when a calm, composed interview suddenly flips? And the guest everyone expects to stay polite decides she's had enough and turns the tables live on air. Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The studio lights are bright, the audience is already energized, and the conversation has that usual morning show rhythm. Light laughter, polite applause, everyone easing into the segment. Sunny leans forward slightly, cards in hand, her tone measured but clearly building towards something more pointed. "So, you've had an incredible run lately," she says, smiling, but there's a seriousness behind it. "From major films to fashion, you've really become one of the most talked about young stars. But with that attention also comes scrutiny." Zendaya nods, relaxed in her chair, legs crossed, hands folded loosely. "Yeah, that's part of it," she says calmly. "You kind of learned to take the good with the very loud." The audience chuckles softly. Joy jumps in. Very loud is one way to put it. A few laughs ripple through the crowd. Sunny continues, leaning in just a bit more. "But some of that scrutiny hasn't just been about your work. It's been about your choices, the roles you take, the messages people think you're sending. Some critics say you've been selective in a way that feels calculated." There's a slight shift in the room. Not dramatic, but noticeable. The kind of shift where people stop settling into their seats and start paying closer attention. Zendaya's smile stays, but it tightens just a fraction. "Calculated how?" she asks, her tone still even. Sunny doesn't hesitate. "Well, choosing roles that align with a certain image. Speaking out only when it feels safe. Some people feel like you're playing it very carefully instead of being fully open." There's a low murmur from the audience. A couple of oohs sneak out before people quiet themselves. Whoopi tilts her head slightly, watching Zendaya closely, but not stepping in yet. Zendaya lets a second pass. Then another. She nods slowly, like she's considering it. "I think it's interesting," she begins, "because people often say they want authenticity from public figures. But what they actually mean is they want access. And those aren't the same thing." A few claps break out. Not loud, but supportive. Sunny smiles, but there's a hint of pushback already forming. "But don't you think, with your platform, there's a responsibility to be more transparent? Especially when young people are looking up to you." Zendaya leans forward now, mirroring Sunny's posture slightly. "Transparent about what exactly?" she asks. The tone is still polite. But there's an edge now. Not aggressive, just sharper. Sunny flips a card, glancing down briefly. "Your personal beliefs, your stance on certain issues. Sometimes it feels like you stay neutral until it's comfortable to speak." The audience reacts again, this time louder. A mix of agreement and surprise. Joy raises her eyebrows. "She's asking the real questions today," she mutters, half joking, half serious. Zendaya exhales softly through her nose, a small smile returning. "I think there's this expectation," she says, "that if you're visible, you owe people a running commentary on everything you think and feel." She pauses, letting that sit. "And I don't agree with that." A louder round of applause now. Some audience members nodding. Sunny nods too, but she's not backing off. "But silence can also be interpreted as a statement," she says. "Do you understand why people might feel that way?" Zendaya's expression shifts again, this time more thoughtful than defensive. "I do," she says. "But I also think people sometimes confuse silence with absence. Just because I'm not posting something or saying it publicly doesn't mean I'm not engaged, or informed, or active in my own way." Whoopi finally leans in. "That's a fair point," she says, her voice calm but firm. "Not everybody needs to do things on camera." Sunny glances at Whoopi, then back at Zendaya. "But when you do speak, it tends to be very measured. Very polished." The word hangs there. The audience reacts again, this time more divided. Zendaya tilts her head slightly. "Is that a bad thing?" she asks. Sunny shrugs lightly. "It can feel less genuine to some people." That lands heavier. There's a brief pause, one of those rare live TV silences where no one jumps in immediately. Zendaya lets out a small laugh, not dismissive, but definitely pointed. "So, let me get this straight," she says, looking directly at Sunny now. "If I speak carefully, I'm calculated. If I don't speak enough, I'm avoiding things. If I speak emotionally, I'm probably being dramatic." The audience reacts instantly, laughter, applause, a few mm-hms. She continues, her tone still controlled, but clearly firmer now. "It kind of sounds like there's no version of this that makes everyone happy." Sunny smiles, but it's a tight one. "That comes with the territory." "Right," Zendaya says. "But I think the important thing is, I'm not here to make everyone happy." That gets a stronger reaction. Applause builds, a few cheers rising above it. Joy leans back, grinning. Well, that's honest. Sunny nods slowly. So you don't feel any pressure from public expectations? Zendaya shrugs lightly. Of course I do. I'm human. But I've learned that if you try to meet every expectation, you lose track of your own voice. Whoopi points slightly toward her. That part. The audience claps again. Sunny flips another card, clearly not done yet. Some people would argue that having a platform like yours means you should prioritize those expectations. Zendaya doesn't hesitate this time. Why? She asks. The directness catches the room off guard. Sunny blinks once. Because of your influence. Zendaya nods. I take that seriously. But influence doesn't mean obligation to perform a version of myself that fits everyone else's idea of what I should be. The tension is fully there now, but it's controlled, not chaotic. The kind that keeps people glued to the screen. Sunny leans back slightly, crossing her legs. So you don't think public figures owe the public anything beyond their work? Zendaya shakes her head gently. No, I think we owe honesty. But honesty doesn't always mean exposure. There's a noticeable shift in the audience. More nodding now, more agreement. Joy jumps in again. That's actually a really important distinction. Sunny glances at Joy briefly, then back to Zendaya. But how do you define honesty if you're holding things back? Zendaya smiles again, but this time it's different. More confident. More certain. I define honesty as being real about what I choose to share, she says. Not sharing everything just to prove I'm real. The audience applauds again, louder this time. Whoopi nods slowly, clearly impressed. That's a line right there. Sunny pauses, looking at Zendaya for a moment longer than before. It's clear now. This isn't going the way she expected. And Zendaya knows it. She leans back slightly in her chair, relaxed again, but there's a quiet confidence in her posture now. Like she's not just responding anymore. She's leading the conversation. The energy in the room has shifted, and everyone can feel it. Sunny doesn't immediately jump back in this time, and that hesitation is just enough for the shift to become obvious. The audience feels it. The other hosts feel it. Even the rhythm of the show, usually quick, overlapping, controlled, slows down for a second. Zendaya glances briefly across the table, then back at Sunny Hostin, her tone still calm but now carrying a little more weight. But can I ask you something? She says. That's new. Sunny raises her eyebrows slightly, a polite smile returning. Of course. Zendaya tilts her head just a bit. Why is it that when young women, especially in this industry, set boundaries, it's seen as being calculated or distant? But when others do it, it's called being private or professional. The audience reacts instantly, louder than before. A mix of applause and surprised murmurs spreads across the studio. Joy lets out a small, "Oh," under her breath, leaning back like she just felt the temperature rise. Sunny keeps her composure, but she shifts in her seat. I think that depends on perception, she says carefully. And public figures don't always get to control how they're perceived. Zendaya nods. That's true, she says. But I think the language we use matters too. There's a brief pause. Not awkward, just charged. Whoopi watches closely, her expression thoughtful, clearly letting this unfold without stepping in yet. Zendaya continues, her voice steady. Because when you say calculated, it carries a negative assumption. Like there's something manipulative about being intentional. A few audience members clap again, softer this time, more focused. Sunny leans forward again, picking up the thread. But intention can also be strategic, she says. And strategy isn't always a bad thing, but people are going to question it. Zendaya smiles slightly. Absolutely. And they should question things. I'm not above that. She pauses, then adds, but I think there's a difference between questioning someone and boxing them into a narrative. That lands. The audience reacts with a low wave of agreement, some nodding, a few audible yes. Joy jumps in, sensing the moment. Well, people love a narrative, she says. Especially when it comes to celebrities. They want to figure you out, label you, move on. Zendaya glances at her, nodding. Exactly. And sometimes the label sticks more than the truth does. Sunny interjects quickly, not letting the momentum fully shift away. But you've benefited from that attention too, she says. The narrative has also helped elevate your platform. There's a slight edge to it again. Zendaya doesn't flinch. I won't deny that, she says. Attention is part of the job. But I don't control every version of the story that gets told about me. Sunny presses. But you do control what you put out there. Zendaya leans in just slightly again. I control what I choose to put out there, she corrects gently. I don't control how it's interpreted, twisted, or amplified. The audience claps again, more unified now. Whoopi finally steps in, her voice calm but grounding. Let me ask something here, she says, looking between them. Do you feel like you're being misunderstood more than you're being fairly critiqued? Zendaya takes a second before answering. I think it's both, she says honestly. And I think that's true for most people in the public eye. Sunny nods, but she's still focused. So when people say they want more from you, more openness, more clarity, what do you say to them? Zendaya's expression softens slightly, but her tone stays firm. I say, I hear you, she begins. But I also have to protect my peace. That line hits. The audience responds immediately, applause, louder than before, with a few people even standing briefly before sitting back down. Joy points at her, smiling. That's the line right there. Protect your peace. Zendaya lets out a small laugh, the tension easing for just a second. But Sunny doesn't let it fully dissolve. Some would argue, she continues, that protecting your peace can sometimes be a way of avoiding difficult conversations. The audience reacts again, this time more mixed. Some agreement, some pushback. Zendaya nods slowly. It can be, she says. But it's not always. She pauses, then adds. And I think it's important not to assume which one it is without actually knowing the person. There's a quiet from Whoopi, acknowledging the point. Sunny tilts her head. But that's the challenge, isn't it? The public doesn't know you. They only know what they see. Zendaya's smile fades just slightly, not into discomfort, but into something more serious. Exactly, she says. And then she turns it fully. So why are we expecting them to make accurate judgments about who I am as a person based on that? She asks. That question lands harder than anything before. The audience reacts with a louder wave, applause, a few gasps, some people leaning forward in their seats. Joy looks at Whoopi, eyebrows raised. She's flipping this, she mutters. Whoopi nods slightly, almost impressed. Sunny pauses again, longer this time. Zendaya continues, not rushing, but not backing down either. I think it's okay for people to have opinions, she says. But I also think it's important to recognize the limits of those opinions. Sunny regains her footing. But isn't that part of fame? Being open to those interpretations, even when they're not accurate. Zendaya nods. It is, she says. But being open to it doesn't mean I have to agree with it, or shape myself around it. The audience claps again, steady, supportive. Sunny leans back slightly, crossing her arms loosely. So you're saying you're comfortable being misunderstood? Zendaya thinks for a second. I'm comfortable being myself, she says. And if that means being misunderstood sometimes, then yeah. That draws one of the biggest reactions so far. Applause, cheers, a few people calling out support. Joy laughs softly. That's a strong answer. Sunny smiles, but there's a clear shift now. The dynamic has changed, and she knows it. But let me ask you this, she says, trying a different angle. Do you ever worry that by not engaging more directly, you leave space for others to define you? Zendaya's response comes quicker this time. They're going to do that anyway, she says. The audience reacts instantly, laughter and applause blending together. She continues, her tone still grounded. No matter how much I say, how much I share, how clear I try to be, people will still take what they want from it. Whoopi nods firmly. That's the truth right there. Sunny exhales slightly, a small smile breaking through. So what's the balance then? Zendaya leans back again, more relaxed now, but fully in control of the conversation. The balance, she says, is knowing who you are before the world tries to tell you who you should be. There's a brief silence, and then the audience erupts. Loud applause, a few people standing again, the energy in the room completely shifted from where it started. Joy shakes her head, smiling. You came ready today. Zendaya laughs softly. I just came to talk. Whoopi leans in, looking at Sunny with a knowing expression. And she is. The tension isn't gone, but it's different now. It's no longer about putting Zendaya on the spot. It's about keeping up with her. The applause doesn't die down right away. It lingers, stretching just long enough to make it clear that the energy in the room has fully shifted. What started as a probing interview has turned into something else entirely, and everyone at the table knows it. Sunny Hostin adjusts her cards again, but this time it feels more like a reset than a continuation. She smiles, measured, composed, but there's a subtle acknowledgement in her expression that the conversation isn't going in the direction she initially set. Okay, she says, letting out a small breath. Let's take this a step further. The audience quiets down, sensing another turn coming. Zendaya sits back comfortably, one arm resting on the chair, her posture relaxed but attentive. She's not defensive anymore. If anything, she looks ready. Sunny leans forward again. You've talked about knowing who you are before the world tries to define you, she says. That sounds strong, but for a lot of young people watching, that's easier said than done. So what do you actually do when the pressure gets overwhelming? This time, the question lands differently. Less sharp, more grounded. Zendaya nods slowly. That's a real question, she says. Because it is hard. There's a softness in her tone now. Not a retreat, but a shift. I don't have it figured out all the time, she continues. I think people assume that because you look composed, you always feel that way. And that's just not true. The audience murmurs in agreement. Joy leans in. So what happens when you don't feel that way? Zendaya lets out a small laugh. I go quiet, she admits. Not publicly, just in my life. I take a step back, I check in with people I trust, and I try to separate what's real from what's noise. Whoopi nods. That's important. A lot of noise out there. Sunny watches closely. But stepping back, doesn't that sometimes fuel the same criticism we were talking about earlier? Zendaya smiles slightly. Yeah, it can, she says. But I've had to learn that not every decision I make can be based on how it's going to be perceived. She pauses, then adds, because if it is, then I'm not really making decisions for myself anymore. There's a quiet wave of agreement from the audience. Sunny tilts her head. So where do you draw the line between self-care and accountability? That question brings the tension back, but in a more thoughtful way. Zendaya leans forward again, resting her hands together. I think accountability is about being honest when you've done something wrong, she says. Self-care is about knowing when something isn't yours to carry. That lands cleanly. The audience responds with steady applause, not explosive this time, more reflective. Joy nods. That's a distinction a lot of people struggle with. Sunny presses gently. But in the public eye, people often decide what you should be accountable for. Zendaya nods. Exactly, she says. And that's where it gets complicated. She looks directly at Sunny now, not confrontational, but direct. Because sometimes people hold you accountable for things you didn't do, or for not being who they expected you to be. The audience reacts again, some quiet hms, a few claps. Whoopi leans in slightly. That expectation piece is heavy. Zendaya nods. It is, and it can become overwhelming if you don't set boundaries around it. Sunny folds her hands together. But boundaries can also create distance between you and your audience. Zendaya doesn't hesitate. They're supposed to, she says. That answer draws a louder reaction. Some surprised laughter mixed with applause. Sunny raises her eyebrows. So you're okay with that distance? Zendaya smiles, a little wider this time. I think some distance is healthy, she says. Because closeness without boundaries can turn into entitlement. The audience reacts strongly. Applause builds quickly. A few audible yes from different corners of the room. Joy leans back, clearly entertained. You're not holding back today. Zendaya laughs softly. I'm just being honest. Sunny nods slowly, absorbing it. Let me ask you something more personal then, she says. Has there ever been a moment where you felt like the public completely got you wrong? There's a brief pause. Zendaya's expression shifts, not guarded, but more serious. Yeah, she says quietly. More than once. The room stills slightly. She continues, choosing her words carefully. There have been times where something I said, or didn't say, was taken out of context. And suddenly there's this version of me out there that doesn't feel like me at all. The audience listens closely now, no interruptions, no laughter. And the hardest part, she adds, is realizing you can't correct every version of that story. Sunny nods, softer now. That must feel frustrating. It does, Zendaya admits. Especially when people are reacting to something that isn't accurate. Joy leans in. Do you ever feel the urge to just set the record straight? Completely? Zendaya smiles faintly. All the time, she says. But then I ask myself, who am I doing that for? She pauses. Because the people who already understand me don't need it. And the people who've already made up their minds might not accept it anyway. That line hits deeply. The audience responds with a quieter, more emotional kind of applause. Whoopi nods slowly. That's a hard truth. Sunny watches her for a moment, then asks, so what do you hold on to in those moments? Zendaya doesn't answer right away. She takes a breath. I hold on to the people who actually know me, she says. My family, my friends, the ones who see me when the cameras aren't there. Her voice softens slightly, and I remind myself that their understanding matters more than a headline or a comment section. There's a gentle wave of applause, less intense, but more meaningful. Sunny nods, her tone noticeably calmer now. That's fair. But then she pivots again, subtly, carefully. But let me challenge you on one thing, she says. The audience perks up again. Zendaya looks at her, attentive. You've said a lot about protecting your peace, setting boundaries, and not letting public perception define you, Sunny continues. But do you think there's ever a risk of becoming disconnected from the very audience that supports you? There it is, the tension returns, but it's more layered now. Zendaya considers the question, her expression thoughtful. I think that depends on how you define connection, she says. Sunny leans in slightly. How do you define it? Zendaya answers without hesitation this time. Connection isn't about constant access, she says. It's about authenticity when you do show up. The audience reacts again, applause building steadily. She continues, her tone firm but calm. I'd rather show up honestly sometimes than perform constantly just to stay visible. Joy nods emphatically. That makes sense. Sunny presses one more time. But visibility is part of maintaining relevance. Zendaya smiles, but there's a quiet confidence behind it now. So is integrity, she says. That lands as one of the strongest lines yet. The audience erupts again, louder than before, a mix of cheers and applause filling the studio. Whoopi leans back, clearly impressed. Okay. Sunny exhales, a small laugh slipping through. All right, she says. I hear you. There's a shift in her tone, not defeat but recognition. Zendaya relaxes back into her chair again, the tension easing slightly, but the control of the conversation firmly in her hands now. The energy in the room feels different from the beginning. Not confrontational anymore. Respectful, but still charged. Because everyone knows, this conversation isn't over yet. The applause takes a little longer to settle this time, and when it finally does, there's a different kind of energy in the room. It's not just excitement anymore, it's respect. The kind that builds when a conversation goes somewhere real, somewhere people didn't fully expect when it started. Whoopi Goldberg leans forward slightly, looking between Zendaya and Sunny Hostin, a small smile on her face. Well, she says, letting the word breathe a little, this is why we have conversations. The audience chuckles softly, some clapping again. Sunny nods, her posture more relaxed now. The edge from earlier has softened, not gone, but reshaped. I think what's interesting, she says, is that we started this talking about perception, and somehow ended up talking about identity. Zendaya smiles. I think those two things are always connected, she replies. Joy leans in with a grin. And sometimes in conflict. Most of the time, Zendaya says lightly, drawing a small laugh from the audience. There's a brief pause, but it's not tense anymore. It feels like the kind of pause that happens after something meaningful has been said. Sunny looks down at her cards, then back up. I'll be honest, she says. I came into this wanting to push you a bit. A ripple moves through the audience, some surprised, some amused. Zendaya raises her eyebrows slightly, smiling. I could tell. Laughter breaks out, genuine, warm. Sunny smiles back. And I appreciate that you didn't just give the safe answers. Zendaya nods. I try not to, she says. Whoopi jumps in, pointing lightly between them. And that's the thing, this is what people want to see. Not just agreement, but understanding. The audience claps in agreement. Sunny turns slightly toward Zendaya again. Do you feel like moments like this help people understand you better? She asks. Zendaya takes a second. I hope so, she says. But even if they don't fully agree with me, I hope they at least see where I'm coming from. Joy nods. That's fair. And I hope, Zendaya adds, it also shows that it's okay to have these conversations without everything turning into something negative. The audience responds with a softer, thoughtful applause. Whoopi leans back, satisfied. That's growth right there. There's a light shift as the segment begins to wind down, but the conversation still has weight to it. It doesn't feel rushed, and no one is trying to squeeze in something dramatic at the last second. Sunny glances toward the audience briefly, then back to Zendaya. Last question, she says. If you could say one thing to the people who watch you, support you, but also sometimes criticize you, what would it be? Zendaya exhales softly, thinking. I'd say thank you, she begins. The audience quiets again. Because even the criticism means you're paying attention, she continues. And I don't take that for granted. She pauses. But I'd also say, allow people to grow, she adds. Allow them to change, to evolve, to be human. That lands deeply. The audience responds with one of the most heartfelt reactions of the entire segment. Steady applause, some people nodding, a few even visibly emotional. Joy puts a hand to her chest. That's a good note to end on. Whoopi nods. Yeah, it is. Sunny smiles, genuine this time. Thank you for that. Zendaya nods back. Thank you for the conversation. There's a brief moment where all of them share a look. Not tense, not competitive, just mutual acknowledgement. Then the audience breaks into applause again as the segment officially wraps. The camera would normally pull back here, music starting to rise, but the feeling doesn't just end in the studio. Because almost immediately, the conversation spills beyond it. Clips start circulating within minutes, short moments of Zendaya leaning forward, calmly pushing back, asking, why? The line about protecting your peace, the moment she says, they're going to do that anyway. And especially, so is integrity. Social media lights up. On platforms like Twitter, viewers are already debating. Some users are praising Zendaya for staying composed under pressure, calling her responses measured but real, pointing out how she never raised her voice but still shifted the entire tone of the conversation. Others are defending Sunny, saying the questions were valid, that public figures should be challenged, and that the discussion only worked because it wasn't one-sided. Clips trend quickly. One post reads, Zendaya didn't dodge a single question. She just refused to be boxed in. Another says, Sunny asked what a lot of people think. Zendaya answered in a way most people can't. Over on Instagram, fan pages are reposting clips with captions like Grace under pressure, and this is how you hold your ground. Even casual viewers, people who didn't watch the full segment, are pulled in by the tone of the exchange. Not explosive, not chaotic, just real. Backstage, the atmosphere is quieter. There's no lingering tension, no visible conflict carrying over once the cameras are off. Sunny and Zendaya exchange a few more words, off-mic relaxed. Whatever intensity existed on camera seems to have stayed there. Whoopi walks past them with a small smile, patting Zendaya lightly on the shoulder as she goes. You held your own, she says. Zendaya smiles back. I tried. Joy, passing by, adds with a grin. You did more than that. There's a lightness now that wasn't there at the beginning. And that's the thing about moments like this. They don't end when the segment cuts. They linger. In conversations people have later that day. In comment sections. In the way viewers rethink what they expect from public figures. And from the people who question them. Back in the studio, as the show moves on to the next segment, you can still feel a trace of what just happened. Not dramatic. Not explosive. But impactful. The kind of moment that doesn't rely on shouting or walking off stage. Just clarity, confidence, and a willingness to stand your ground without losing your composure. And for viewers watching at home, it leaves a question behind. What does it really mean to be authentic in a world that's constantly watching? If you watched this moment, share your opinion in the comments. Was Zendaya right to push back? Or do you think the questions were fair? And don't forget to subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories like this.